As with many things I cover, I have a storied history with the Animal Crossing series, starting way back on the GameCube. Like other fans, I eagerly awaited the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons since the launch of the Switch, and now I've officially played it for a full year's time. Along with my previous experience doing much the same with every other entry, this gives me a unique position in which to assess New Horizons 1 year after its release, as a standalone title and as it compares to its predecessors. There's a lot to cover, so let's take it from the top. For the uninitiated, Animal Crossing is a life simulation game that can be considered a cross between The Sims and Harvest Moon. In each game, you move into a new town populated by friendly animal neighbors and live out a second life in a cozy little town. New Horizons breaks from the established formula slightly. Instead of moving into an already populated town, you get an entire deserted island to cultivate as you see fit, moving in alongside 2 other random villagers. And they really do mean deserted. There's only a single tent near the airport, and on the first night you'll be setting up tents for everybody. Shortly after you arrive and collect a few materials, you get the chance to name your island, are saddled with a loan, and are introduced to the new Nook Miles system. This works like a traditional achievement system you'd find on other platforms, with the additional benefit of being awarded miles for every goal you meet. These miles can be redeemed for various rewards ranging from furniture to quality of life improvements like extra inventory space and additional customization options. These, along with the Radiant Nook Miles Plus goals, are an excellent addition that not only serve as a checklist of things to do throughout the game, but provide an incentive to do specific activities and encourage the player to check in daily for bonus points. To reach the first major goal, a crafting system is introduced, and it's an interesting addition to the Animal Crossing series. While a staple of other games of this style, Animal Crossing has never been particularly deep on a mechanical level, being more tuned for relaxation and casual play than the intricate time management systems that make games like Stardew Valley compelling. Like in many games these days, New Horizons' crafting system requires you to gather materials from the game world in order to craft new tools and furniture. Your first foray into this system will also teach you about typical Animal Crossing fare like fishing and bug catching, which will be your primary money-making tools throughout much of the game, and each has its own compendium of critters to collect that changes as the year goes on. The beginning of New Horizons is very goal-oriented, much more so than previous entries, with things the player previously never had to engage with, like creature collection for the establishment of a new museum, being a required part of moving the game forward and giving more options to the player. Progression at the start of New Horizons is significantly more limited than in previous entries. It's likely in an attempt to ease players into more complex tasks, but comes at the expense of player freedom. It's something new players will probably be just fine with, but longtime fans will likely be annoyed by these restrictions. All the same, however, it does manage to make the mundane feel more exciting at the start of the game. Finally getting a proper shop and inviting the Able Sisters to your island, for instance, go from expected staples of the series to noteworthy events. Even the music reflects this progression. The traditional hourly music tracks don't appear at first, instead being replaced by a simple acoustic guitar track that progresses with the growth of your island community until the town hall is built and hourly music tracks return. All these small objectives lead up to the final objective in the storyline to invite KK Slider, one of the most iconic characters in the series, to perform at your island, finally bringing together all of the major series staples that have appeared throughout the franchise and letting the player loose to customize the island as they see fit. Everything the player has been working towards so far is in service of the ultimate objective of New Horizons: to provide the player complete freedom of expression. Almost everything from your house, your clothes, and your island itself can be outfitted, and in the case of the island, bent to your will using the new terraforming system. For the first time, you have near complete control over your island's layout. Create your own lakes, bend the rivers to fit your needs, create large cliff sides, create your own paths throughout the island. Your island's look and feel is ultimately up to you in a way no previous entry could dream of. Even from the start, the player is given more control over their own appearance than in any previous entry, eschewing the tradition of the player's appearance at the beginning and being controlled by an arbitrary personality quiz. With customization at the forefront of the experience, however, what options you aren't given become more obvious problems. You can't change your beaches, where your pier is, the large stones around the border of your islands, where the mouths of your river are, or where the town hall and the event plaza are located. These are set in stone from the moment you pick a layout at the start, and the game doesn't tell you about these limitations. You're able to move all major buildings except Town Hall, and I seriously can't fathom why this choice was made when every other structure in the game can be moved to the player's discretion. The speed in which you can execute your design plans is also excruciatingly slow. Terraforming can only be done a single tile at a time, meaning large changes are tedious to implement, and if you happen to screw up along the way, it might take a while to correct the error. This isn't a problem unique to New Horizons. This can happen in games like Minecraft and Terraria as well, but what is unique to New Horizons is the time gating involved in major activities like moving a building or constructing something new. Each time you move or create a structure, you have to specify where you want to build it, hope the game thinks there's enough room for it, pay for the construction, and wait for a day of real time for it to be completed. At the start of the game, and in previous entries of the series, these time gates serve as an incentive for the player to pick up the next day. While there's still merit to that idea, the interruption and paywall become irritating by endgame where player freedom is supposedly the ultimate focus. Especially when something as simple as moving a building a tile to the left or right becomes a 3-day effort because the game refuses to let you simply nudge a building. It's incredibly obvious the structure and pacing of a traditional Animal Crossing game was never designed to accommodate such extensive player freedom, and more care needed to be given to make these elements work better together. All the effort in customizing your island doesn't have to be just for yourself though. Animal Crossing has built itself as a communication game since the series' inception, and in this regard, New Horizons is a huge success. It's no secret that New Horizons had the most perfect release date imaginable entirely by accident. Releasing just at the start of the 2020 global pandemic, when people were encouraged to stay inside and avoid physical contact with others, New Horizons provided a way for people to interact with friends and family without risk, and connecting with friends makes the game much more enjoyable. From casually relaxing with your friends, sending gifts and trading items with friends and strangers, to seeing how other people have laid out their islands, New Horizons substantially benefits from communication with others. In particular, the addition of the hemisphere system that better reflects real-world differences have been able to put into context how big the difference in time and season are between some of my friends and I. Connectivity options in general have been substantially improved over previous entries. You're finally able to send letters and gifts to friends over the internet. You no longer have to hassle with friend codes to organize trades with strangers over the internet, and the danger of strangers destroying your island is virtually removed thanks to restrictions on destructive tool use. Since New Horizons got a global launch, part of the fun at the start of the game was the community discovering and sharing secrets throughout the beginning of the game, trying to figure out how exactly to trigger specific events and how some of the new mechanics worked. Experiencing the community pulling together their knowledge for everyone's benefit was incredibly enjoyable and made the early days of New Horizons the best time I had with the game. Speaking of community, I've neglected to mention the small community of villagers that live on your island. Unfortunately, this is because villager interactions in New Horizons are incredibly shallow, and now more than ever they serve as set dressing to your game instead of a major focus. Tamahiro has a video that goes into much more detail as to how villager interaction and overall importance has degraded over time, but it's plain for any player to see very early into their experience with the game. Dialogue starts to repeat incredibly quickly, and villagers will rarely ask anything of the player or interact with them at all. There's a hobby system for villagers, but it's rudimentary, and I don't think I could tell you what any of my villagers' hobbies are because they never bring them up in conversation, making any two villagers of a particular personality type functionally identical to one another. I understand that there's only so much dialogue they can write for each personality type, and repeating dialogue has always been a problem, but the general sanitizing of villager interactions over the years has reached its peak here, with any and all snark or bite removed. Villagers being reduced to background elements emphasizes the importance of community-driven engagement to the game, as does the way items are handled. New Horizons wipes the extensive list of items obtainable in previous entries clean in favor of more realistic items you'd find in your average home. Many of the more strange and surreal choices are either gone entirely or locked behind the random DIY system. And between this and the fact that certain color variations of items sold in the store are only available if your airport's roof is a particular color, Communication and trade with other players is practically mandatory for both the casual player and players like me who in previous entries would make an effort to complete their catalog and obtain every item in the game. Between the need to communicate with others to get items you want and villager interactions not being satisfying enough on their own, it starts to feel like you're being pushed towards getting a paid Nintendo Switch Online subscription. Which sucks, because the Switch Online service is notoriously poor. Another major change New Horizons makes is in how it structures holiday events. Holidays have always been a big part of Animal Crossing, being one of the biggest reasons to check in throughout the year, and New Horizons is no exception, with major holidays being accompanied by major updates. Time traveling to specific holidays wasn't an option this time around, making it more exciting for the community at large to anticipate what might await on a particular holiday. Whether any of them lived up to their potential, though, that's up for debate. Bunny Day, the Animal Crossing version of Easter, went notoriously poorly. Various kinds of Easter eggs were scattered across town through just about every mechanical interaction with the game you have. Hitting rocks, in balloons, chopping trees, and so on all produce eggs. The problem here is that any actual resources you may have gained from these actions are replaced with these eggs. And considering this event started very close to the game's launch, many players found their progress even more delayed because instead of the materials they needed to continue with the game's story, they instead got useless eggs that just ate up storage space. It didn't help that the things you can create with these eggs are rather ugly too. The event is about the same quality as it was in previous entries, just stretched out far too long with detrimental gameplay implications and lackluster rewards. Thankfully, the development team seems to have learned their lesson after Bunny Day, with every holiday afterwards not affecting regular resource gathering, and instead giving the player opportunities to decorate their island beforehand, a first for the series. This is a double-edged sword, however. Being able to decorate beforehand is great for those who want to get into the holiday spirit, especially in 2020 when going outside was not encouraged, but leads to rewards for events feeling lackluster, mostly consisting of duplicates of things you could purchase beforehand with one or two special items at the end of the holiday event. Most of these events leave DIY recipes to chance as well. Obtaining all of them between the beginning and end of an event is frustrating because they randomly drop from balloon presents, and if you miss any of them, you'll either have to move your clock backwards or wait a full year before getting the chance to obtain them again. There are only 6 major holiday events in total: Bunny Day, Fireworks Season, Halloween, Turkey Day, Toy Day, and Festival. And minor holidays are very rarely, if ever, acknowledged in-game anymore. Given that it's been a full year of updates now, it seems unlikely any more will be added, leading the calendar year to feel much barer than in previous entries. Since these holidays are all being rolled out through updates now, this is a shining example of why content rollout in New Horizons is so lackluster. Besides a few small updates from throughout the year that introduce some new items, there have only been 2 new mechanics introduced. Diving returns from New Leaf, and pumpkins can now be grown as a new type of material. These smaller rollouts aren't bad on their own, but nothing has really grown the game on a mechanical level from its release in a substantial way, since diving is incredibly similar to fishing and pumpkin growing is a shallower form of flower tending. Other ongoing titles rely on their existing systems to make small updates keep player engagement going, but that luxury doesn't exist here. In Splatoon, for instance, small updates usually consisted of one new weapon or one new stage, things which have interactions with every other weapon currently in the game. In New Horizons, 9 times out of 10, a new chair is just a new chair. The community at large seems to have grown dissatisfied with these incremental updates as well. Festival's announcement was the first time I recall seeing major backlash, not for what it brought to the game, but for what it failed to bring: quality of life changes. Quality of life seems to have been a major focus during New Horizons development. It makes major strides in ease of use in countless areas. The introduction of the pole vault and ladder to make traversal quick and easy, a significantly larger inventory, faster access to tools, tweaked flower mechanics, and countless more tiny changes that make the core game more fun to play on a moment-to-moment basis. Unfortunately, not every grievance players have had with previous entries has been addressed here, and some of the new mechanics bring new problems to the table that have yet to be solved by updates. The changes to flower growth are mostly positive. Cloning single flowers is a huge boon, flowers being resistant to trampling and not having to worry about them wilting are all greatly appreciated changes. What's less appreciated is the fact that you can't control flower growth very well. Whenever it rains or snows, every flower in your town will be watered and may have the chance to clone or breed with a nearby flower the next day. Removing excess flowers from your entire town is a huge chore, since removing them now requires you dig up the whole plant. In a large town with a relatively large flower population, this can eat up half an hour or more a day just because you decided to log in while it was raining. Item storage in your house is simultaneously better and worse. You have much more room to store things and can sort your inventory, but you can no longer access the storage from anywhere but your house. If you forget something you were going to bring to a friend, you're in for many long loading screens, a short trip, and needlessly long dialogue trees with Orville to make up for it. Special NPCs such as Gulliver and the traveling salesfolk now appear daily, which is good overall as it ensures you'll have something to do when you log on each day, but it does make them feel much less special than they otherwise would. Every day, you'll be given an announcement by Tom Nook and later by Isabelle about major happenings in your town. This is useful at first and an excellent flavor touch, but quickly starts becoming a nuisance after you run out of major accomplishments to achieve and Isabelle instead prattles on about her TV habits or other useless information. The segment never being used to introduce the day's special NPC boggles my mind. It feels like such an obvious inclusion, yet instead we get to sit through Isabelle telling us how she found her lost sock every day for eternity. The new crafting system isn't bad, but two major flaws keep me from using it to its fullest potential. The first problem is that you can't craft multiple items at a time, instead requiring you to go through the crafting menu and through the crafting animation for every single item you want to craft. Most players will have to suffer through this for fishbait if nothing else, since you can't buy it for whatever reason. The second is that while you're at home, you can't use materials in storage to create items. This is understandable if you're out and about or on a friend's island, but why can't you take items from your home storage pool instead of dragging them out and putting the remaining materials back in after you're done? There's a few other smaller issues. Why can't you sell and store items on a Mystery Island tour, yet the means to do so exists on Harvey's Island, for instance? And most of these seem like they could be addressed in future updates, but considering the year we've had, it seems less and less likely any of these new problems will be addressed. The biggest problem that I can almost guarantee will never be addressed, though, is tool durability. Tool durability was introduced to complement the new focus on resource gathering and to demonstrate the value of gathering materials on a mechanical level. Your tools now break after a certain number of uses that the game never clarifies to you. Once you break a tool, you'll have to craft or purchase another, and that's where the problem really lies. This is a mechanic designed for the very early game when you're just starting out that only serves as a punishment for using your items later in the game. Games like Breath of the Wild can get away with breakable weapons to keep the pace of the game up, give the player more rewards for exploration, and encourage variety in playstyle and strategic thinking. Animal Crossing gains nothing from a durability system. A fishing rod is always used in the same way, as is a net, as is an axe, as is a shovel. In previous entries, I would fish as a way to relax, but since tools break on you seemingly at random, the zen of fishing can easily be broken by the need to gather materials for another one, or take an unplanned trip to the shop for a replacement. Tool durability being unnecessary is made much more obvious with the introduction of diving. The wetsuit, obviously, won't break during use, and makes any arguments about breaking tools being balanced by a larger inventory space null and void. Even the golden tools can break. What should be the ultimate reward for going above and beyond with certain tools are reduced to trophies due to the scarcity of gold, making crafting them not worthwhile as anything but. A lack of rewards, an emphasis on customization, and the shift away from long-term goals in favor of a high degree of player freedom isn't bad on its own. Minecraft, for example, thrives on this, but still rewards the player for great accomplishments and has many underlying mechanics to deepen the experience. New Horizons being mechanically shallow, having many unclear limits on player freedom, and not having overarching goals like previous entries in the series makes it so. Animal Crossing as a whole, and especially New Horizons, practically requires immersion and a strong imagination because it has little mechanical depth and things to do beyond collecting items. This lack of depth makes what's missing from previous entries stand out like a sore thumb. Different tiers of tools that upgrade what you can do with them, colored ores, perfect fruit, town ordinances, gyroids, store upgrades, and minigames in general are all absent even 1 year later. Although future updates have been promised throughout 2021 and potentially beyond, it's extremely weird that updates to the game haven't been very substantial, and especially odd that basic quality of life features have been neglected. Burnout affects every Animal Crossing game. It would be impossible to populate a game with enough content to last you a full year with brand new things every day. But it should have been easier to stave off in a frequently updated title. Unfortunately, the developers may feel it's too late to add any new buildings because the community at large likely has their island design set in stone at this point. And though the possibility of new mechanics being added is still there, if their approach with QOL features is anything to go by, even that seems unlikely. It adds up to the game being unsure of the direction it wants to take. New Horizons in many ways moves the series forward while simultaneously being unwilling to shed remnants of past games that conflict with this approach, trying to start from scratch without fully committing to the change in style. All of that said, I don't want to end this on a sour note. I experienced major burnout starting pretty early on, sure, but I don't want to downplay the good times I've had with this game, and especially with friends during this trying year. It's still an excellent game, and has the potential to create so many kinds of atmospheres other games dream they could achieve, like serenity and awe, made from the gorgeous view of your town early in the morning with a beautiful piano accompaniment. Even if it fails to surpass New Leaf and doesn't satiate the collector in me, New Horizons does what Animal Crossing does best. It creates a relaxing and compelling life simulation game enriched by the presence of people you care about with reasons to return throughout the year. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you could leave a like and/or comment down below, and if you want to see more of these long-form analysis videos in the future, please consider subscribing. Until next time, I'm Forma, and those are my thoughts.